Christ and Antichrist are related to solar versus lunar worship, male god versus female goddess concepts. Christ is divinity descending from above without sex. Antichrist is divinity produced on earth with sacred ritualized sex. The Antichrist concept attempts to ritually incarnate divine kingship, through sacred sexual union with divine sin. Killing king as sacrifice. In early goddess religions, the king was a temporary sacred consort whose authority depended on fertility. When his vitality waned, he was ritually killed or replaced, to renew the land. This act represented the death of the male consort, not the death of the goddess, who remained eternal and sovereign. Even you can see traces of this in trinities where male is dying but not female: Isis Osiris, Nimrod Semirisi, Dumuzi Yana, Baal Anat. Merlin Stone when God was a woman. In her book, Stone suggests that later patriarchal religions reinterpreted this ritual because it placed ultimate authority in the female divine principle, transforming the king from a sacrificial figure into a permanent ruler protected by male gods. Traces of the older pattern survive, in her view, as myths of dying gods, scapegoat kings, and condemned righteous men, where ritual death is moralized, historicized, or shifted onto outsiders. Stone believed that in the earliest times, queens ruled and passed on their birthright to the next generation, but that kings were temporary. Inanna, Ishtar, Isis, Venus, Aphrodite, and Astarte, primordial goddess figures, were the main deities in antiquity. The goddess was viewed simultaneously as a harlot and as a virgin, a mother, a lover, and a young maid. She was also a goddess of wisdom, just like the later figures of Athena in Greece, the Gnostic Sophia, and the Semitic demoness Lilith were also viewed. She was frequently shown with an owl as a companion or familiar spirit. Hieros Gamos. The kings who ruled the various city-states of Mesopotamia at that time were merely the husbands of the queens, who, as representatives of the goddess, were truly in charge. As the story goes, the goddess married her own son when he was very young, probably still a child. Later she had him killed in a fit of narcissistic rage because he had disrespected her in some way, like Attis, Cybele. King sacrifice. Sir James Fraser's book The Golden Bough discusses king sacrifice ritual practiced by many Neolithic cultures. Frequently the king was a lad, much younger than the queen, and he would be sacrificed shortly after the wedding, sometimes a few days later, sometimes a few years later. He was immediately replaced by another young man who was made to play the same role. This was done as a fertility rite, and in ritual remembrance of the original relationship between the goddess and her husband, son. Temple prostitutes for king sacrifice. The husband of a queen could not be ordinary, he was expected to be the product of a divine union. She can marry her son, but needs a lot more. This need lies behind the law of temple prostitution. If a temple woman gave birth to a son, he could become a candidate for a temporary or ritual king of goddess queen, since he was believed to be born from a sacred sexual rite. For this reason, temple women were later banned from marriage with ordinary men. They were seen as capable of producing sacred children, potential rivals and therefore threats to established kingship. Enough sin for Antichrist. Antichrist can be born from the highest sin, mother and first son, via divine right. So since the evil Baal cult is afraid of the evil goddess cult, he demands a firstborn son. That is preventing the Antichrist for them. All of them are, in a way, pharaohs marry with their sisters, for holy sin, like Akhenaten. Indeed, marrying a sister donates the divinity to Pharaoh. Erasing goddess. Baal, Moloch, Yahweh cults overthrow goddess cults. Baal means husband, and his marriage to Astarte was, according to Stone, the original source of his divinity. He too had a myth about being slain, and the goddess mourning his death. It was to him that babies were sacrificed in the fiery belly of the Moloch oven, built in the shape of a bull. Sumeriologist L.A. Waddell claims Baal and Abel are of the same mythology. The myth of Cronus killing his father, taking the throne, and then eating his own children, describes a revolution of this sort by a son of the royal court who refused to be sacrificed in honor of the goddess. After achieving victory over his elders, he may have demanded that the firstborn of each house be sacrificed in order to eliminate potential political rivals with royal birthrights and loyalty to the goddess cult. In Greek mythology, Gaia, Earth, created and partnered with Uranus, Sky, to produce the first generation of deities, including the Titans. Due to Uranus's tyranny and imprisonment of their monstrous children, Gaia and her son Cronus, plotted to overthrow him. Cronus castrated Uranus with a flint sickle, separating heaven and earth and seizing power. This dynamic differs fundamentally from the Isis-Osiris relationship, which emphasizes restoration rather than overthrow. These myths reflect transitional phases in which divine authority shifts between earth-centered and sky-centered models, rather than a simple opposition of goddess versus god worship. Mithras blood baptism. Mithras was born from a rock, and created the world from the blood of a bull that he slew. Afterwards, the sun god descended from heaven to eat the bull meat with him. From that moment on, the two became one, the father and son. In the rites of Mithras, his followers would sacrifice bulls, then revel and bath in the entrails as a baptism of blood. Afterwards they would eat the flesh together as a form of communion. This may be related to the Christian concept that sin can be washed away with the blood of a sacrificial victim, or sacrifice in other beliefs. The myth of slaying the bull was in some sense a cultural memory of the slaying of Baal. Perhaps also, the murder of Baal was in some way being paid homage to by the sacrifice of babies in the Moloch oven. According to Julius Evola, the Knights Templar were accused of making similar offerings to Baphomet. In The Mystery of the Grail he wrote, "Typical is the distortion behind the charge that the Templars used to burn before their idol the children that they begat in sin." All this probably amounted to a baptism of fire. In summary, later male deity-centered religions hated the goddess system so much. In a goddess theology, the male king is merely the sacrifice of the next year. Therefore, they did not take women into their secret occult groups. They blamed all old goddess rituals. Baal's firstborn son's sacrifice was meant to prevent an Antichrist symbolism. The belief was that divine sin, the mother sin ritual of holy blood, would bring an Antichrist into the earth, which would overthrow the Baalist priesthood.